Righty, here we are. Okay, again, another RCR 360 Unplugged. Welcome along, everybody. Come on in. Tell us where you're from. Say good day. It'd be good to. It's so good. It's been too long in between drinks, really. And of course, hi, hi everyone. And of course, joining me now, joining me is Alistair because he's on the road. Hey, how's it go? How's Wellies?
Yeah, Wellington's nice. It was a really nice day for it. It seems like every time I come here, it's a nice day. I think that they're just trying to tell everybody it's not nice. It's all windy and all of that just to keep us away, I think, Maree.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
staying at a
No.
place here right on the beach. We're looking out over the Cook Strait. As the sun
Oh.
went down today, I could see the South Island. It was beautiful.
Stunning. Sounds like you're in Lyell Bay or somewhere in those parts. It sounds really,
Somewhere
really
around there.
nice.
I'm actually not sure what the name of the area is.
Oh, so hey, so good to see everybody. Gosh, and a lot of people here who are going to be from the places that we're visiting on the tour. So it's so good. Hi, Yvonne, Linda, Delene, and Mike. I saw you there, Mike, hiding in Foxton. There's so many of you coming on in, and it's so good to see you. So just while you're all heading on in, I'm just going to quickly share my screen while you're all heading on in and saying good day. So obviously, the tour kicks off now. There's only 4 events sitting there. Do not panic. People, do not panic. We are literally adding these as they come. This is a great new system called Flickit. We love it because as tour events get added, we can add them to this page. It's easy for you to share this link, and you would have seen it in a whole bunch of the socials that have gone out. But take a note of this: realitycheck.radio.flickit. So that's ticket with a T, flickit.co.nz /events, and it has all of them here. So these are the 4 that are up and running at the moment. We've got Palmerston, obviously, which is going to be Saturday, and Kapiti on Sunday. Tickets are available for both of those, and they're actually really starting to tick along. So if you know people in and around Palmerston North, if you're talking to people and they're saying, oh, this is Palmerston, this is not on the coast, this is not going to affect us. Tish tosh, people, if you can flood, this will affect you. Is that correct, Alistair?
Yeah, if you can flood, if you can earthquake, if you can have a geothermal fracture under the Earth's surface, if there's anything that some boffin can predict with a model, then you're in the way of managed retreat. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, so these are the 4 that are there at the moment. Tauranga will probably go up tomorrow. We've just finalised that venue. That is going to be June 8th. So after this weekend, Tauranga is the next stop on the list. And then you'll see there Gisborne, June 15. June 14 is going to be Hawke's Bay. We're just pinning that venue down now. Then that will pop up. And then you'll have Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. And then Christchurch. And that's going to start the first of a great leg down south in Christchurch, which is going to be a huge week for you and I, Alistair. And we are going to be chewing up some miles heading south down on that east coast, aren't we?
It's always a good trip down there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's going to be absolutely massive. And so where we're going to be heading is just so everyone's got it, just to give you an idea, get your pencils out. So as I mentioned before, Palmerston Kapiti this weekend. June 8th is going to be Tauranga. That's a Sunday. June 14th is Hawke's Bay. 15th is Gisborne. Then we've got the 21st is Christchurch. And yep, 21st is Christchurch. And then we're sort of heading south. So we've got, we're looking Dunedin on the 22nd, then Invercargill on the 24th. And I'm glad to see some people here from the deep south. So we're definitely heading in your direction. We're definitely also wanting to head in Dunedin as well. We hear there's lots of issues going on in South Dunedin. Then once we've done the South Island, we're going to give ourselves just a wee break for a couple of weeks. Then up to Auckland, we're actually going to do Whangaparoa on the Hibiscus coast. It's either going to be the 5th, 6th, or 7th, somewhere in there. Then we're heading back down south again. So these dates are still just being ironed out now, but that will be in that period, that week starting 12th July. So sort of 12th through the 15th is the West Coast's time to shine, and we'll be heading in that direction. And July 20th in Wellington has been confirmed. Now, you went to a whole heap of these places, Alistair, with We
Yeah.
Came Here for Freedom. I mean, what was it? I mean, what's the vibe? Why is going to these events so important and the opportunity to bring people together?
I think that's exactly what it is, Maree. It's the opportunity to bring people together. And, a lot of these issues, We Came Here for Freedom was a great example of it. And I think Managed Retreat's another good example too. They like to divide us. They like to stop us talking about these things. They like to silo these issues in their own little echo chambers in the mainstream media. And so when we get to take a film like these down there, a lot of the time with We Came Here for Freedom, people had seen the film already. And so, but going along and being part of the community and rubbing the shoulders and knowing that you're not alone in the thoughts and so on was such a huge thing for that. Likewise, with Managed Retreat, this is an opportunity for people in the community, like-minded people in the community, to connect and know there are other people in the community who are talking about this problem and are seeing it in their future. And that means that then you can start to organize and so on. And hopefully, as we go around too, we'll be able to bring along people from the local area. Say, for instance, I know in Westport, where we're hoping to get to, there's a lot of great local knowledge there. Kapiti as well. This in a couple of days' time, there's a lot of great local knowledge, and these people who know the topic inside and out, they'll come along and they'll participate as well. It becomes an education experience as well for everybody. And so, if it's in your area, it's a great idea to come along so that you can just connect with all those people and find out what's the little thing that's happening in your area that's different to what's happening in Kapiti or down in Christchurch or down in South Dunedin. Everywhere's got a slightly, their councils, their local government all have different little angles they're coming at it with, right? So yeah, that's it's a fantastic opportunity just to connect and yeah, just to connect.
Yeah. The other thing too is that this is also a really good way that if you know people that don't necessarily engage with RCR content on a normal basis,
Yeah.
this is a topic that crosses all boundaries. So essentially if you're a property owner or somebody who rents or leases a property that could be potentially at risk, the tickets are $5. Suggest to them, buy them the ticket and drag them along. Hey, I just got a text before from Jackie in Palmerston North. She's got two city councillors coming. If you are in any
Great
of those
news.
areas that we're going to, you've got a finger into the council, send them the invitations, send them the links to come, encourage your local officials to attend this film. Because what you found, Alistair, is that some of these local officials have no idea of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I find the managed retreat discussion, the more we talk about it, the better chance we have of fighting it. Because everywhere you go, you say, people will ask me, "Oh, what are you working on at the moment?" "Oh, I'm working on a documentary about managed retreat." "Oh, what's that?" And you're right. Even councillors, even local government people don't actually know what you're talking about. But it's real, and it's at the highest levels of government, really.
Mm. Now, I'm going to read out some comments that we had from people who have already seen the film, and you're going to queue up a little teaser for us as well.
Yes.
These are some of the This is some of the feedback that we've already had from those who have watched it online on the app or at realitycheck.radio. It is firstly, hi Alistair, your doco on managed retreat was really interesting and worrying. We live in Gore, Southland. There's been some restructuring in Environment Southland. The rumours are that they're going to be backing away from flood protection and more about letting nature take its natural course. Gore's flood banks saved the town in 2020, but it was touch and go. The flood banks held back 2,700, and it says CU6, so I'm not quite sure what that is. The banks should have been strengthened, but the talk is that this isn't going to happen. Gore is a rural servicing town of 8 to 9,000 residents, with a rural catchment of 12 to 13,000. It appears that the flood protection people are moving on from Environment Southland and are being replaced by the Greenies. The map on the Environmental Southland website shows that if the flood bank breaches in North Gore, the CBD and a vast number of the town would be underwater, as would Mataura, etc. I think this would be interesting if you look into this. Eastern Southland is a prosperous region, and this is concerning. I'm not on any council committee, but it's good to but it's just good. But it's just you hear this stuff and you wonder who's going to ask the questions. Regards, Alison. Alison, that's a great letter.
Two things there, Maree. Number one, that's one of the reasons why we're wanting to go down to Invercargill, right? Because this is a big story down there. There's also the story at Blue Cliffs down there as well. Jaspreet Bopara has been updating me on what's going on there. And that leads me to the second point. And that is, with a lot of these managed retreat discussions, what they actually are man-made crises being blamed on climate change. And a lot of the time, that's part of the whole strategy, I suppose. A lot of the time they'll say, they'll just let nature take its course instead of building back a seawall or building back a stop bank or something like that. And then they just blame it on climate change. And they say, oh, that's when they start having that conversation about managed retreat. So it's really important for people like Alison to actually keep the pressure on and keep pointing out that it is actually, that this is a man-made problem. Now, in Managed Out, we have the story about Westport, and that's exactly the same situation where it's a man-made problem causing the flooding there. And I've been able to depict it in a way that's really nice and graphical, and it's easy to understand. That's what we need to do. We need to keep on putting on the pressure and telling those stories so that the councillors just cannot ignore them.
Yeah. And again, if you know anybody that is in local government in that area, in Gore, or any of those areas affected by Environment Southland, get them to the screening in Southland. And as Alistair said, we're actually spending a few days in the Deep South because there are so many stories like this and we want to get those stories on tape. Here's another. Hi, I just watched the amazing RCR 360 movie. So awesome. And I just want to say that flooding is on the agenda. I'm here in Hamilton. The council here is mapping the city presently. I was asked by my insurance company last year to renewal time for my contents insurance and whether or not I'm in a flood area. I had no idea, and I realised that if I am, I need to disclose it, or I wouldn't be paid out if I needed to claim. So I just want to alert Alistair about this. Feels like that we're all in trouble no matter where we live now. Thanks, Alistair, and all the
That's
RCR
right.
team. Regards, Robin. Well, and I mean, you had that insurance situation, didn't you, in Kapiti?
Yeah, and you know what? It's really interesting. Sorry, what was the person's name that sent that in?
Robin.
Robin. So Robin, it's the same thing has just happened in Kapiti. As we put out the film just a few weeks ago, the Kapiti Coast District Council was working on putting out more flood maps, and I don't actually know the number. I believe it's in the millions, where they put out a new flood map showing places which are actually on the beach 6 meters above the beach. Okay, there's the sand dune, and then there's sort of a cliff, and it's 6 meters high, and they're trying to tell people that those houses using their flood maps are going to be underwater. So this is the flood mapping is, I think it's looking like it's becoming the next big way that they drive this. And the insurance companies, as Dean just mentioned in the chat here, the insurance company, the next thing that happens is the insurance companies pull out, house prices dive, insurance premiums go up, and then actually people have to start moving.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw it. And I mean, I live 50 meters from the coast, not even like one street over, basically, from the ocean. And we've seen a tremendous rate rise here because we're in a coastal inundation zone.
Yeah.
you know,
rises as well.
exactly. Here's another kia ora. I've just watched your documentary on land grabs in New Zealand. Just heard you mentioning screenings around New Zealand using climate change narratives and legal mechanisms, and I wanted to reach out with a suggestion. Have you considered making a follow-up documentary focused solely on South Dunedin? It's a textbook case, a historic working class suburb now being framed by the media, ODT, councils and consultants as a climate sacrifice zone. The narrative of the inevitable flooding and sea level rise has been used to justify managed retreat, but many locals see it for what it is: a calculated effort to displace vulnerable communities and open the land for $1 billion redevelopment opportunities. There's a real story here about climate policy and being weaponized, about the erasure of heritage neighbourhoods, and about how global agendas trickle down into local planning decisions. And right now, very few are telling it from the ground up. It sounds like something you'd consider. I'd be glad to assist with contacts, local history, and community voices when you're ready to speak up. They haven't provided a name, but they did provide an email address. And thank you for reaching out, because we're heading in that direction, aren't we?
And that's exactly the reason why we're heading in that direction, because
Yep.
it's South Dunedin.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there. Now, you have a fantastic trailer. So for those who haven't seen the film, or if you want to sort of get a wee refresher of trying to drag along other people to come and visit it, you've got this now. And if you could share that, that would be, well, actually, while you're doing, I've got one more quick one I'll read out. In regards to, dear Alistair and Maree, it was a pleasure to watch your documentary on Thursday night, superbly made and presented with a very powerful message. Congratulations, Aaron, in Christchurch. And we're going to be screening in Christchurch very, very soon.
Thanks, Aaron. Shall we have a look at the
Yeah.
clip? Here it is.
The government is grappling with a concept known as managed retreat. It's the process of moving communities out of the most vulnerable areas.
As you'll soon see, this story about the industry of managed retreat is also the story of climate change. And it's not just a New Zealand story, it's a global one. But for many of us here in New Zealand, it starts here in the Hawke's Bay, because this is where most of us heard the words managed retreat for the first time, in the wake of Cyclone Gabrielle, together with the heartbreaking images of people's homes overcome by mud. Because it was here in 2023, after Cyclone Gabrielle, that the media and the politicians reacted to the problem with their solution.
New Zealanders may look back on this week as the moment we began seriously reckoning with climate change.
And there's two words New Zealanders are going to get used to hearing over the next few years is managed retreat.
But this is also the point where this story gets darker than any New Zealander could imagine. Because built on the media's claims of a coming war with nature and their alarming predictions of temperatures that will threaten the extinction of humanity are all those government and lobby group reports, and inside those, below the confident assertions that climate catastrophe is unavoidable, the Ministry for the Environment are also proposing that among the options, stronger powers are needed that supports the compulsory acquisition of land or a power to retire land by cancelling its title. That's the Ministry for the Environment's words in their own report. Our government is now in the business of writing laws for compulsory land acquisition in preparation for disasters that haven't yet happened.
And what does that mean?
It means you don't get a choice. We're going to manage you off here. You take what we ask or you'll get nothing. That's what I was told.
So powerful. So powerful. And just a couple of things from the chat. As Dean said before, you mentioned Dean's comment, the documentary is a must for everybody. Porirua ratepayers have just had a letter sent out saying the council want consultation on flood mapping. The end result is an increase in insurance premiums. Gay is in Kapiti, and she said, as a Kapiti resident, our house insurance has risen by 35.5% this year, and that's an additional $800. Insurance company response was, even if our place wasn't necessarily affected directly by flooding risk, it did affect the wider neighbourhood. And Sarah said, yes, Kapiti District Council is trying to trick us into saying our properties flood. We get rain, yes, puddles, yes, but the water recedes sufficiently soon after. They already put my rates up 37% in addition to the increase on property insurance. It's insane.
Maree, I just see another comment here in the chat from Claire Chambers. on a related topic, insurance companies are also planning to restrict insurance for houses near active fault lines. New active fault lines are being found from time to time in New Zealand, especially in the South Island. So far, house owners don't know about this. This is another serious issue for New Zealand. This to me is actually what it's about. I remember during the summer, I was up at Waiheke and I went with the family. We went out to Onatangi Beach and I went for a swim. And I got out and I was lying in the water enjoying the waves. It was beautiful. And I look back and there's this cliff, and at the bottom of the cliff is a whole row of like $2 million houses, beach houses, right? And at the top of the cliff, there's another row of $2 million houses up there. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, how on earth are they going to move all these people? Because to be able to own one of those places, you really have to have business acumen. You have to have access to lawyers and all of that stuff. And that's when it suddenly struck me. This isn't about moving everybody off the coast. Yes, there is a lot of moving people off the coast involved in this, and that's what the Kapiti people are fighting, for instance, right? But this affects all of us because, as you saw in that clip just now, they're trying to change the law so they can literally take your property from underneath you. And as Claire points out, you know, this could be applied for some modeler sitting there, you know, predicting where a new fault is going to arise. Yeah. And suddenly you have to move. I live in an area where that could probably be a problem. But once they change the laws so that they can take your land from underneath you, then it's all over. Property laws in New Zealand, democracy is gone.
But there's also a reason why they're targeting areas like Westport and South Dunedin, because they're not those $2 million properties who are potentially owned by KCs and high-powered lawyers or people that can afford them. They're actually targeting areas where it takes a lot more work to actually bring this to a legal level to be able to challenge it.
And then it's low hanging fruit, right? And it creates a precedent and all of that stuff. And also, you know, you look at Westport, what they're trying to do is they're trying to reconstruct a whole new town. How do you think they're going to do that? Do you think you're going to get your quarter acre section, or are you going to get stack and pack?
Yeah, exactly. Now we're going to kick off with the first story, just in a managed retreat theme, and very much that comment at the end of your trailer, I think, segues into this story beautifully. It was on One News, but it was under the Te Ao Māori sort of area, and the headline is 5 Gisborne marae to relocate with government support. 5 marae in the Gisborne region are set to relocate to safer ground following severe weather events in early 2023. The government has announced the support package exceeding $136 million to facilitate the moves. Emergency Management Minister Mark Mitchell says the local councils have deemed the current locations of these marae at the high risk and not safe to occupy due to the potential threat from future extreme weather events. The funding will cover relocation of the marae structures, support for 24 affected whenua Māori properties, demolition and damaged residential building, and assistance for culturally significant sites including Urapa. Māori Development Minister Tama Pōtaka noted that the relocation process, which includes rebuilding Wharenui and Wharekai, were necessary. It's expected to span over the next 2 years, and 3 of the marae are located in Uawa-Tolaga Bay, while the remaining 2 are in Tikaraka. The Crown is also collaborating with 2 Ngāti Kanuhu marae, Tongoeo and Patani in Hawke's Bay, to provide similar support. Now, that, you know what leapt out at me was that $136 million. So I did a little bit of a back of the pie packet calculation on that, Alistair, and that works out, that's 20. So if you break it down to 29 entities, 24 properties, 5 marae. And
what's
it worked just shy of $4.7 million each for demolition, and some of them have already gone, demolition and relocation. Now, is it the lady at the end of your trailer there from Matata, did she get offered $4.7 million for her place that actually got picked up on its foundations and sort of started to drift out to sea? Did she see a settlement, anything like that size?
What they were offered was the price of their land and their house at so the flood, the disaster happened in 2005. Okay. So my understanding from her was that she was offered the price of her land and house at 2004 prices. Now, bear in mind, they didn't offer this for, I think, about 7 years. And then they kept fighting it. All the residents said, no, we're not moving. We're not going to accept your voluntary retreat idea. And in the end, they had to. In the end, it just became untenable. There was a guy living in a what do you call those? A container at one point, and he was just saying, "This is no longer what I want to live in. I have to leave." And so the last of the residents left in 2022. So it wasn't exactly a great deal to get 2004 prices in 2022, was it?
No, no, it's just so wrong.
But there's another part to that as well. What you're talking about there is the way that the Maori side of this is being approached. And when you look through all the reports, the managed retreat reports, and the ideas that are floating around, one of the ideas that they have is that if you are asked to leave, for me, who is not Maori, what I would be given is the cost of my house and up to 8 meters around my house. Okay. That's what I would get as a financial package to move somewhere else. Now, if everybody is being done like that, then I don't understand how they think. And of course, you're not going to get 100% of that. You'll get something like 80%. That's what they're suggesting. Of course, it doesn't equate to getting something similar somewhere else, because first of all, there's going to be a whole lot of people moving there. So there will be managed retreat inflation, right? And then where's the land going to come from? I mean, last I checked, all the land in New Zealand was all bought and paid for and drawn up on maps and so on, right? But with Maori, what they're talking about is that Maori will get to keep their land. They just can't live on it. And they will get the payout to move somewhere else as well. So there's whole other levels to it as well, which they haven't been... Those are only in the stages of being written in reports, like suggestions. So that's why it's not actually, I'm thinking of adding that to the managed out documentary, but it's not in there at the moment because there's nothing factual around that at the moment, but that's what's being suggested. And that's what we're seeing in that story.
And they look, yes, and particularly with the examples that were cited in and around Tikaraka, that they were looking at moving them into, because, there's actually quite large tranches of Māori land in those areas. And so they're looking at moving these things to places that are outside of the flood zone and sort of up on the hills. Now, if you look, I'm from that neck of the woods, that entire area is a floodplain. It has been flooding since time immemorial. I mean, there is nothing new here. What concerns me, and I'd love to know this when we go through Wairoa, is, I'm sorry, I mean, they're talking about down here, Tangoio and Patani. If you actually drive to Gisborne, and I'll point it out to you when we get here, the Tangoio Maree, and which was an amazing complex, was completely decimated during Gabrielle. But this isn't sustainable. I mean, the budget was today. They're cutting things left, right, centre. These payouts are not sustainable. If they're going to be making all of these places, Wairoa most of it is whenua land. So, I mean, if it's $136 million for 29 entities, what is it going to be in Wairoa? I mean, everything on the south of the bank in Wairoa is...
But this is why I say, Maree, that I'm not absolutely sure that that's what they're planning on doing, moving everybody around. I think the real purpose of this is changing the property rights, because they think that when they see a nice piece of land, wouldn't it be nice to just move everybody off? And like, for instance, where we live, the valley we live in would be a great mega farm to feed China. You could make a lot of money off that if you could just move everybody on out. And, you don't go trying to move out the people with $2 million houses with the access to lawyers. You move out the people who don't have the ability to fight.
Yeah. Now, speaking of lawyers and fighting, this is a great segue for our next story. And we wanted to cover this because you have a personal connection. And also, too, we're picking that this is not going to be out and about in legacy media much. And Stuff seeks security costs in a defamation case filed by Chantal Baker. New Zealand media outlet Stuff has requested the High Court to require Chantal Baker to provide security for costs in the defamation lawsuit she initiated against them. Baker, a prominent social media figure known for her commentary on various issues, alleges that Stuff published defamatory content about her. Fire and fury, anybody? Stuff's application aims to ensure that funds are available to cover legal expenses should Baker's case be unsuccessful. The court's decision in this matter will determine whether Baker must deposit a specified sum before the case proceeds. Now, this has been funded in large part by the centrist, and this looks like a little bit of legal jiggery-pokery to me, Alistair.
Yeah, well, look, she won in her case against the New Zealand Herald. She settled, my understanding is that she settled early on that one. She didn't take it to court. The New Zealand Herald offered to settle. She took the settlement. She says that it was a substantial amount, what they settled for. And the reason that they settled at that time was because when you have these defamation cases, when it was printed, you have a certain amount of time before you have to bring it within that certain amount of time. After that, it's all over. You can't bring a case. So at the time she was doing the New Zealand Herald one, that time was coming up for the Stuff one, and the Stuff one's the big one because that's the Fire and the Fury. That's Kate Hanna in there saying all sorts of nasty things, which are just indefensible. And I think so. What you're seeing there is Stuff trying to bluff. They're trying to delay. They're trying to bluff. I say, go for it, Chantal. Go get them. They need to be got. The lies that they spread, the disinformation, the smearing, the vilification, it has to stop, and an example needs to be made. And this is what Chantal's has the opportunity to do.
Definitely go for it, Chantal, and we'll keep a close eye on how these things proceed. So, yeah, it will be fun and games. Right, moving on to actually a much meatier topic that that's been very, very hot in the media over the last week or so, and that has been around the social media ban for the under-16s. A new members' bill introduced by National MP Catherine Wedd from my neck of the woods down here aims to ban social media access for anyone under the age of 16 in New Zealand. The social media age restricted users bill would require platforms to verify users' ages, with penalties for non-compliance and mandatory review after 3 years. Wedd, a mother of 4 and MP for Tuki, says the bill is designed to protect young people from online harms such as cyberbullying, exposure to explicit content and addictive platform design. The legislation mirrors recent changes in Australia. The bill has received strong support from the parent-led advocacy group Before 16, co-chaired by Anna Curazon, of which you have a clip for. And the group welcomes the move, but also calls for wider reforms targeting social media's impact on youth mental health. A recent Horizon research poll shows 74% of New Zealanders back age restrictions on social media. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon asked Education Minister Erica Stanford to explore the policy further. However, ex-party opposes the policy, and Labour leader Chris Hipkins has called for broader national discussion. The bill is currently in the biscuit tin and is waiting to be drawn for the luck of the drawer. Now, this is one of those bills that I think is a nice, shiny vote getter. I discussed it on the Fourth Estate with David Harvey and Peter Williams a couple of weeks ago, so do go and refer back to that show. To me, this is one of those things. This is all about what they're not saying it's about, from my perspective, and that, of course, is a way to prove how kids are under 16, and they claim that they're putting the onus back on the social media companies. Now, as mentioned, this is happening in Australia. It's supposed to come in effect in Australia in December. They're having all sorts of issues in Australia, from how to actually, the social media companies are saying it's just not reasonable or viable for them to actually get this data in order to have proof of age. And then if they were to get it, that data is quite powerful. So how is that security going to be looked after? And that's even before you get into the fact that if you've got a tech-savvy 14-year-old and you want to stop them doing something, they can do it. VPN anybody. So
sounds like we need a digital ID run by the government, doesn't it?
Wouldn't that be a handy old thing?
Look, first of all, this bill is it a bill? Are we talking about a bill?
It is a private member's bill, which means that it's in the biscuit tin. It has to be drawn.
So what it's really about is about adults being identified, isn't it? It's not about under 16s being identified. They just can't go on because they won't be able to have a digital ID. So they make it sound like it's about under 16s and all us adults are free and easy. But no, it's about us adults proving our age. And that is a slippery slide. As we know, we did our Digital Future series last year on RCR. If you haven't had a listen to that, that's an audio series. Get on the RCR website and app and go through it, because what you'll find there is an incredible amount of interviews. One of the first things that jumps out to me when I remember it is Catherine Austin Fitz talking about what this ends with, what digital IDs and CBDCs and all of that ends with is taxation without representation. Now, another person that I interviewed on there was Dr. Robert Epstein. And, this is all about social media, right? Dr. Robert Epstein, he studies Google and how Google uses ephemeral instances. So when you're using Google, they'll show you something which will influence you, and then it will disappear and no one will ever see it again. That's why it's called ephemeral. And that's what these social media companies do. Just recently, there was a story that came out. I'll see whether I can share it right here, where it turns out that Facebook has been doing studies on its users, on 700,000 users, seeing whether they can influence them emotionally. Sorry, as I'm talking, I just can't find it as I'm talking as well and concentrate on talking.
Oh, it's just further down the page, actually. I've got it here. Is that the one? Anyway.
As you're just looking there, the point that I'm trying to make is that this is what social media companies do. They influence people. That's how they make their money. That's how they sell their advertising and so on. So in a way, I sort of look at it and I say, well, hey, this is a really good opportunity for us all to switch off. I know during the zombie apocalypse, I got rid of Facebook and Instagram, and I thought, oh no, this is going to be terrible, but I have to do it. And I honestly, I do not miss it. Social media is like the one-armed bandit in Las Vegas, right? You pull the lever and you think that you're just hoping that you're going to get a dopamine hit. And that's all it is. So I think that it's actually a good thing if we all get rid of social media, quite frankly. And, that's the other thing. Just the last thing I say is that when you do that, you do what happened to us all during COVID. During the apocalypse, we all got together in our VFF groups and we became communities again. We started talking to real people again, and maybe in a backhanded kind of way, this talk about social media bans and digital IDs and all that will help us all rediscover that.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said now. Coming from a parent with two teenagers, one of the big things for us has been, of course, is having that discussion around social media. And I've got, of the two kids that I've got, one of them, he's not been a social media user at all. Can't stand it.
That's
amazing. Absolutely hates it. And he's 19 in a couple of weeks. Hates it. His younger brother had it for a wee while, had a moment where it actually affected him emotionally. We talked it out. he's very limited on it. And it's interesting, Radio New Zealand, and thank you, Jackie, for sending this link through us today. Radio New Zealand put up a great story about a group of teens in Tauranga, Mount Maunganui, who have said no to social media and are actually using brick phones. They've dived into the old drawers, and there they all are using their brick phones. And so it means that they still can make calls, they can still do everything that they need to do, but they can't support social media apps. And it actually forces them to get out and get together. And they've been also influencing some of their friends to do the same thing. And they're just finding they're generally, pretty happy out there and much happier for it. So there are definitely ways around it to put those phones down. Now, on the other side of the fence, there's also youth mental health advocate called Jazz Thornton. Now, she actually, funnily enough, spoke at my son's school yesterday, and she's been speaking out against the ban because she also too sees that social media and certain groups, particularly things like Discord and the like, are actually a really important tool for teenagers who are very isolated to be able to connect. So it's about, I guess, finding that fine line, isn't it? Where do we find that fine line? And how do we have our children engage not only with their friends, but also engage with the wider community? But we don't have to have the government insert themselves between the parent-child relationship. That's when I get a little bit crabby, Alistair.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that sentiment. But also on the flip side of that, I'd say, well, if you're not on TikTok all day, then you're going to have to be forced to go and talk to somebody who's actually there. Maybe your parents, maybe your friends, maybe your cousins, whoever's actually there. And that will be, I think, even better than having someone on the other side of the world on your social media account telling you that everything's okay. I think it'll be a hell of a lot better for your mum and dad to tell you everything's going to be okay.
Exactly. Well, let's hear it from the advocacy group that is applying a lot of pressure, and some of the key members of this advocacy group have a hell of a lot of moolah and a lot of influence, and this is the group's leader. And as you just pull that clip up and listen very carefully to what it is that she has to say.
The members' bill has become a government bill. This is the business on kids and social media. Catherine Wedd's Insta-ban bill stays in the ballot, but Luxon says that parents love this idea. So Erica Stanford has picked up the government work on the under-16 social media restrictions. They're calling them, not a ban, but potential restrictions. Now, Melinda McLean is a social media parenting expert from the new group Before 16, who's with me this morning. Melinda, good morning.
Kia ora, Ryan.
Good to have you on the show. First of all, this group that's been set up, is this all a coincidence that it's been set up at the time that the government's doing all this stuff?
No, it's not a coincidence. I think there's two things at play. One is that Before 16 has actually been working on this issue in background for months, nearly a year. But there's also a point that we're hitting as a society, I think, where we've got this sort of tidal wave of awareness around some of the harm and the issues. So, we are really coming to, I think, a societal turning point, which the government is aware of, as well as parents who are actually sort of waking up to the issues.
Is the problem, it's the age verification thing is a big problem, right? This is what the Australians are having problems with. How do you verify a child's age without us all having to send in a photo of our passports?
Brian, I think this is a really big misconception, that this can't be done. So there's a couple of things I'd say. So the first is that age verification currently exists within big tech platforms. So they are using their own age verification systems with a lot of accuracy already. And then the other thing I'd say is that there's an entire age verification industry outside of big tech that are working on this as well. The solution is, it's not that they can't do it.
Can you explain how they do it then without?
So there's a couple of different ways, and what we think would be the best way would be a combination of what's called facial recognition, biometric scanning, and then using an ID token to match those two things. And these can be done with over 99% accuracy. That's what all the trials are saying.
So you have to give your biometric data to Facebook?
No, in simple terms, you're not handing over your data. This is done externally by a third party.
So
you don't hand over your data. So it will basically verify an ID token. That doesn't mean you're handing over your data.
So how do they verify it then? I mean, they must have to know that it's yours.
Yeah, there will have to be a linking to this in the same way that we do this with things like RealMe accounts for bank accounts. It's just the issue with verification with something like RealMe is that that's not working on actually determining the difference between a 15 and a 16-year-old. So that's the key
What
issue
about,
here.
Melinda, because there are problems, it could create problems for other people. Isn't this about parents knowing what their kids are doing? If you don't want your kid on social media, don't buy them a smartphone.
I think that is something that would commonly be said by people who are not a parent of a 13 or 14-year-old. So
that is me.
Disagree.
To be transparent, that is me.
There we go. Parents are not equipped to face up to what is happening with big tech. It is moving too fast.
But Melinda, but the actually owning the phone in the first place. Explain to me why that is so hard that a parent can't say to their kid, nah. I mean, my mum said no to me about so many things growing up. I wasn't allowed a cell phone. I mean, what's so hard about saying no till you're 16?
Yeah, I think the other thing that legislation will do, because it's a really good point. Why not just say no? But actually, parents are no match for this. And if you're out on a limb with your kid, which at the moment, because the societal norms are so far the other way, those need to shift dramatically. So
parents actually just need to harden up and toughen up.
Yes. No, this is not a parenting issue, Ryan. This is, and it is actually unfair to put this onto parents. They cannot be a match for these big tech companies. And while we do need,
but you can if you don't own a phone. Okay, I mean it's simple. Big tech can't get you without a smartphone.
They can get you, and they can get you through iPads and family computers and laptops. And what we're talking about is a really comprehensive overhaul of our online safety reform for kids in New Zealand. We are shockingly behind.
Can I say one thing there, Maree? She talks, before we get to the funny stuff at the end, she talked there about how the ID would work and sharing biometric data and all of that stuff, right? I can't remember exact words off the top of my head. Right?
Linking.
What she was saying was that. So if you've ever done a Give a Little campaign, I did one for some family friends last year. And when I did that, I had to put in my details and I had to show who I was. And then it shared it with a group of companies. And I had to agree to that before it could go to the next stage where people could actually donate to this young guy who really needed some cash for a medical problem he was having. And I had no choice. I had to, me being one of these people who understands, how data, personal information is bought and sold. At the time I was doing Our Digital Future. I was doing the series about Our Digital Future, and I knew all about this stuff. And here I was suddenly confronted. I have to give my personal details to these people. And when they say, if you want to know the terms and conditions, click here. And so I click there, and it's just like, we can share it with anyone we want to. And you have no choice whatsoever. So she can say, what she's saying there is that it will be a third party. It won't be Facebook. It'll be someone independent. But the only way that once they get your information, they can do with it whatever they want. And have a look at, for instance, the DNA people, the 23andMe people recently. They're having to sell their company. They're going bankrupt and they're having to sell it. So now all of that DNA data, which they promised they would never sell to anyone else, is going to be sold to someone else. And it's exactly the same with your biometric data, which is going in there independently. It's completely out of your control. And then it gets hacked, and then it gets shared, and it gets sold, and this lady doesn't understand that.
No, she doesn't. And also, too, it comes down to the who chooses what gets banned, for starters. And it's not the age verification for the under 16s, it's the age verification for the over 16s. That's what they're after, because it means everyone will actually have to get that verification. This is really quite terrifying from that respect, because It's not going to stop anything for these kids. I mean, in Australia, they're not even banning YouTube. People keep talking about banning social media. We're going to ban Instagram, but ban Facebook for the under 16s. The under 16s aren't there, people. I've got teenagers. I can tell you that's not where they hang out. And if you do figure out where they're hanging out and you put a ban on that, they will just go somewhere else. I mean, they're resourceful. So I think it's an absolute fool's errand, and I think that and all it is it's a way of capturing everybody's data, because that data is worth gold. And speaking of data, and we'll just move into the next one, is digital and social manipulation. You mentioned before that Facebook story. And what brought this to my attention was that story that you shared, and I'll let you cue that up while I'm reading out the next part. But also too, if you are in our RCR Bites, a couple of days ago, this one came out on the Bites, and it was French spooks pressure Telegram CEO to help bring Romania's elections. In an explosive post on X, Telegram founder and CEO Pavel Durov claimed that France's security services asked him to ban conservative voices in Romania from the social media platform as a way to influence the country's elections. Durov said he had refused. He alleged that the request came from the head of France's intelligence agency earlier that year. The request appeared to fit a pattern of government interference in elections across Europe and to halt the momentum of the nationalist candidate. And in Romania, Liberal Bucharest Mayor Nuxurdan defeated nationalist George Simeon. In Portugal, the nationalist Chega party made significant gains, but narrowly lost to the centre-right Democratic Alliance. Meanwhile, Poland's Liberal candidate Rafał, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that, appeared to have a narrowly beaten a National Conservative Karol Nawrocki, and all of that was in the Bite. So that manipulation, Epstein talked about it. He's been keeping an eye on it. But Facebook, that's where a lot of grown-ups live, and particularly a lot of grown-up women. And look, dare I say it, we are an easily malleable breed. Well, many are.
Well, all humans are, Maree. And look, let's face it, okay? We have to somehow come to terms with it. Social media is a business. It is in the business of hoovering up all of your personal data, all of your likes, everything. Your likes, your dislikes, what makes you happy, what makes you angry. They're in the business of hoovering all of that up and selling it to people in one way or another. And as this clip shows, if it's in their interest to make you angry or make you happy or something, they will do it. Let's have a look at this clip. This is from the Joe Rogan show.
Also responded in a more negative way, as judged through their posts and likes and responses. The group that was exposed to a more positive news feed by altering the algorithm then had also a measurably statistically significant effect of more positive emotional response, and the control group was unaltered by this.
Yeah, that's just so scary.
And look, yeah, like we said before, we did those interviews with Dr. Robert Epstein. If you haven't heard them, I think I've done 2 of them now, haven't I? I did one for
two, one for 360, and one for digital futures,
yeah.
And also to David Sharalambis, and also the 360 episode, he touched on this as well. People, it's suggestivity. I mean, if you suggest something, you're more likely to do it. And it's those ephemeral responses. It's actually having that suggestiveness happen and you don't know that it's happening. That's what's the terrifying part. There is also another film that's coming out as well that we have another clip for. It's a trailer for the film. It's not out yet. It's from Oracle Films. And that is also, I think this is going to be fantastic when it drops, because it also looks at this wider manipulation, because that's the difficulty. So many people have been nudged, manipulated, pointed, influenced, or coerced at some levels into directions that they don't want to go to.
I think that this clip, I can't wait to show this one to everyone, because this has got me so excited. I can't wait for this film to come out, because to me, what it seems to be doing is pulling together everything that we've been talking about on RCR and in 360 and in our digital future. it's bringing together all the different strands. There's the CBDCs, there's the digital IDs, and how they control people and track and trace people and manipulate people. But also, I think what you see here is also how they want to control resources. That's the managed retreat story that we started tonight with.
Yeah.
Shall I share it?
Yeah, definitely.
The lust to control other human beings is a story as old as time. There's a very strong drift in the direction of globalization, of the ultimate centralization of control in the hands of unelected officials at supranational organizations.
They want all of the resources of the world in their pocket.
The bigger picture is that an attempt is underway now to collapse liberal democracy and replace it with global technocracy.
This is a coup. They're saying we can control with rules. We don't need currency anymore.
It's like an inverted prism. You are supposedly free to roam about, but everything you want to access is behind lock and key.
The potential for social control is gigantic and potentially irreversible.
They plan to commandeer land, reduce farming, and radically change the food we eat, transform the supply of electricity, and then dictate how we use it, and replace currency with a system of credits. All three strategies are built on the premise of a climate crisis caused by carbon dioxide.
I do not think there's a climate crisis, and I base that on all the evidence and the climate data sets that we build to answer questions just like that. The government is very clear that they want a catastrophic story.
There is no single science paper that proves conclusively that humans control all or most of the global climate.
Europe's mad dash towards net zero is effectively economic suicide. Politicians are purposely impoverishing ordinary people, purposely deindustrializing Europe.
It's just tremendous amounts of damage in the name of saving the planet. It does make you ask, what is it we're actually saving if we're paving it over?
I think what we're dealing with here is actually a global war on agriculture.
When you look at how many farms are selling up, we're walking into food shortages.
If I can switch everybody from real food to pharma food, then 100% of the agriculture industry can go through my publicly traded stocks, and I have complete control.
This is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world, but it's far more than that. It's a blueprint. It is the action plan.
All life on Earth is going to be radically changed.
Everything will be monitored. The environmental consequences of every human action.
The general population cannot fathom the psychopathy of the vision that they're facing.
Once the digital ID is in place, it's game over for humanity.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. And it opened with Nick Hudson, that oratory from him. He is just fantastic on this. And there are so many people there that many will recognise that second climate film that came out. I think the first one was the Great Climate Swindle, the Great Global Warming Swindle. Then they had a second documentary, and that scientist featured there as well. It's going to be a cracker. There's so many threads that we have been pulling here on RCR 360 and will continue to pull in the coming times.
And it feels like that's the first one that's actually pulling them all together, and you see it so clearly. And I feel like I'm a little bit annoyed that I didn't make that one.
There's time, Alistair. There's time. Look, we before we finish up, firstly, I have to do a big shout out to Dwayne. And Dwayne is in Canada. You must have your coffee on, Dwayne. It is like almost 5 a.m. over there. So that's commitment. Thanks for tuning in to us this morning for you. Yeah, thank you for that. We do really appreciate it. And before we wrap things up today too, if you have been a listener of my show, Encounter Culture, for a long time, you'll know that I have my lifestyle guru, Annie Hart, the wonderful Annie Hart, who has been on several times. And one of the topics we've done, debt, dating and death with Annie. And in the death episode, she actually talked around planning. And part of that was due to her own experience, because she has a family member close to her who was very chronically and terminally ill, and that family member, that was her son, has just passed in the last few days. So Annie, big loves out to you from all of us here. Our hearts go out from everyone here at RCR, and we hope that this time for you, I know you're exceptionally prepared for it, but I hope that everything has gone well, and we're thinking of you. So that's the lovely Annie Hart. Now, also too, the wonderful Tiffany that has been helping us organise the tour has just let me know that Tauranga is just live. I feel like this is election night. Going across now to so-and-so. Tauranga is now live. Tickets are now available for Tauranga. So if you're wanting to go to Tauranga, Armitage Hotel, June 8th, it's all there. So you can start booking that today. And I think definitely anybody that's in that wider Bay of Plenty area, this is definitely one to check out. There are so many places that are affected along that coastline, as well as you said too, the seismic areas and geothermal in your neck of the woods, Alistair, you know.
Yeah, the wider Bay of Plenty.
And the wider Bay of Plenty. So that one is up now, just literally gone live as we've been doing the show tonight. And just remember too, and I just cannot emphasize this enough, if you know people that don't necessarily engage in our content, this is a fantastic film for them to watch. You can get them along, get them connected, and it also allows you to get connected if you're having issues with your council, like some of the feedback that we had before. It gives you a chance to actually meet in person, which is tremendously important. You would have seen that when you've done some of these tours before, Alistair.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's another layer to that too. Like, we've heard that there's a couple of councillors coming along to Palmerston North, to the Palmerston North screening, which is this Saturday night. It gives you a chance to be able to go and talk to your councillor as well, to your representative. So spread the word.
Yeah, definitely spread the word. So thank you for joining us for this very special RCR Unplugged. And as I said, if you're in Palmerston North or can get to Palmerston North, all the Kapiti screenings this weekend. I'm not going to be there because we sort of designed that weekend around another event in Kapiti, and I'm actually going to be in Auckland, but I'm at every other event. So make sure that you go. Alistair is not alone. Dean's going to be there helping hold his hand as well. But
come and say hello.
Come and say hello. So as I said, that's Palmerston North on Saturday, Kapiti on Sunday, and June 8th, Tauranga is now live, which is the next cab off the rank in Armitage Hotel in Tauranga. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and share.